Hey guys, this is Brad with Lucky7 Racing and the Cars, Coffee, and Donut automotive event that happens in San Diego, California. And I'm back at home today on the workbench messing with a little RC drag car project that I started a few months ago, and I haven't had much of a chance to get back to it because I've been waiting on some parts. Well, I finally got those parts in-house and was able to get everything on the car the other day and finally have everything bolted up and kind of mocked up here. I'm going to show you guys a little bit about where I am now with this, and we're just about to the point where we can finally put some power to this thing, put the electronics to it, and start making test hits. So starting off, as you guys recall, this started out as an associated short course buggy that I turned around and narrowed up the front and the rear with some of the associated B4 parts. And a lot of the parts that we have off of the B4 and off the short course buggy also can work with, say, the original associated short course truck or with the T4 stadium truck. So if you guys have one of those, a little bit of what I'm working with will apply to those chassis as well. You may have to go back and forth between the instruction manuals a little bit and kind of look at what parts will work where, and it takes a little bit of research, but it can be done. If you guys are also just running across this video for the first time, the first video that I did on this, I'll have a link to that at the bottom so you guys can go back to that video and then come up to this and kind of catch up to where we are with this. That way you guys can, see where we're at. So as you recall, I went with the Nova body from Proline RC Racing, and I was able to get it mounted a little bit better thanks to the mounting kit that came from McAllisterRacing.com. Now, McAllister Racing within the RC world has been around since probably the late 80s, early 90s, and they're really big in the oval world. And the mounting kit that I have is actually designed for the guys that like to go dirt oval racing and convert their buggy chassis over for, say, like an outlaw dirt oval car and put the wider body on it instead of, say, like a sprint car, which is a lot more narrow. And that chassis mounting system actually allows me to run this body a lot more properly. The wheels are able to tuck up underneath the body properly, just as they need to be able to do within the rules of the class, and you're able to have a pretty nice setup. But when I did mount this body, unfortunately I did it with the car in the air up on the stand, and I should have done it on the ground, and I accidentally mounted the body a little too far forward. So I'm going to have to go back and figure out a way to better mount this body kit, or this body within this chassis mounting kit, and hopefully I can get that to shore up a little bit better. I don't know if I'm going to try and run the car necessarily like this. I may just keep this for making test hits, and eventually I'll get a better body later on and paint that up kind of proper and have a pretty cool looking setup. So taking a look at what we actually have inside here, like I said, starting off, we got the system from McAllister Racing. It's got a front and rear mounting system. The rear mounting system is actually made from a fiberglass mounting plate. It's got its own body mount posts that come with it, and then of course it clips in place off of the rear wing mount for the B4, and you basically use body mounting clips to get it in place. It's a really solid mount. On the front, it's made out of what feels like a Delrin material, and of course it came with all the hardware necessary, and you actually have a plate system here that allows you to move the mount forward and backward on the main plate, and of course you can mount the post forward and backward as well. So you've got a pretty large range of adjustment depending on what body you're going with. So it's really nice because there's now so many bodies out on the market for this type of racing that you can pretty much mount this system and you're set up and pretty well good to go with almost anything. As I got into getting into the rear and actually having the wheelie bars properly mounted, I went with a 3D printed unit from essentially Shapeways Racing, which I found online. And through doing some research through some of the Facebook groups for RC drag racing, some of the guys were talking about that system. And it mounts basically directly right to the back of like the rear motor plate, where you have that rounded plastic piece that sort of protects the motor from a rear collision in like an off-road racing situation. So this was a pretty simple mount. It didn't come with any hardware, but I was able to have some nuts and bolts and put it all together and got it to mount up pretty nicely. And of course the wheelie bars I went with, I found online through, again, research through some of the groups, and went with the system from RC Racing Innovations. And Steve Nelgry over there, who, Steve, if you're watching this, I got your name wrong, I'm sorry. He's the one that manufactures these, and he's got a few different offerings as far as the different designs that he has. In fact, I think he has a new design that he just came out with for 2020. This one that I went with is a little bit of an older design. The reason why I went with the older design is because it looked a little bit more solid, and I have a feeling this car is not exactly going to be real lightweight, so I wanted something that had a little bit more strength back there. The one that I have actually is made from a fiberglass material. It's probably from G10 fiberglass. He does offer one in carbon fiber. It comes with all the mounting hardware that you would need to put everything together, and it mounts right to the Shapeways 3D mount. So I was able to just trim the mount a little bit. It slid right in place, everything bolted together, had no problems. It uses bearings for the wheelie bar wheels instead of like a rubber wheel, which from what I understand, the actual bearings don't hang up as much as you're going down the road versus say like a rubber wheel, like what comes with the Traxxas wheelie bar mounts, those can hang up a little bit when you're launching and taking off from a dead stop. So whether or not there's any truth to that, I don't know, but he seems to think that the bearings work the best, so that's what we went with. All in all, the price for everything on the McAllister mount, I want to say was around 25, maybe 30 bucks. Took about a week for me to get. The Shapeways 3D mount actually took about a month to get. I think those are made to order. And as you look at shapeways.com, they do a lot of different parts that are 3D printed for some of the older associated RC cars, and some look like some other cars on there, as I recall, as well. The mount can come in a bunch of different colors. I went with black, simple way to go, and that was around 30 bucks as well. The rear wheelie bar mount, I want to say, was about 45, maybe 50, and that one took a little bit of time to get because, again, Steve's parts from RC Racing Innovations, they're well sought after. He's got a big demand for them because he does make a quality part, and a lot of people want his wheelie bars. So that took a little bit of time to get, but it finally showed up. So again, Stevie, for watching, thanks for getting that to me. I really appreciate it. All in all, we pretty much have everything we need to really get going. The next thing to really do on this is to make sure that I have the chassis ride height set right and set the shocks. Now the shock oil I'm going to go with is going to be a 50 weight oil, essentially the stuff that you can use right from the factory Team Oil. I use this with everything. The stuff's made by Lucas Oil. Of course, if you do any kind of full-size racing, Lucas Oil is a well-known name in the automotive world, and they manufacture the oil for Team Associated for all of their shocks. It's a silicone oil, and 50 weight is a good middle ground oil, and I'm going to run a two-hole piston within the shock as well, and that should give me a nice smooth transition with the shocks wherever they're needed. You don't need a lot of travel with the shocks, and I'm probably going to set the chassis a little lower than what most people would realize. The rear of the car, though, you actually want to have sitting a little higher. Now, the reason being is, and I'll use this as an example, is essentially when the rear of the car is sitting a little higher than the front, when you go to launch the vehicle, the back is going to squat, and you want that wheelie bar to be able to just hold the car in place and move forward. You don't want a lot of wasted motion going up, and the same thing applies with the guys who run the full-size drag cars, and over the years of me working on those cars, it was the same thing. When we set the chassis and when we set the wheelie bar height, it's because we wanted the vehicle to actually just squat and move forward. And the wasted motion moving up was lost time, lowered, it actually raised the lap time, so you went a little slower, and it could cost you the round. Essentially, it could be worth a couple of tenths on one of these as well. And a tenth of a second on an RC car is huge because, again, we're only running 132 feet, which is 1/10 of 1,320 feet with one of these. And a tenth of a second can mean everything between getting off the line, beating your competitor, and then getting down the track. So that's something we're going to have to play with as we get a little bit further into this. And then, of course, the other thing is making sure that everything is set right with the camber and the toe. Now, back in the original video, I said I had everything basically at about 0 degrees in the front with the camber and the toe, which still is where you want to keep it because you don't need the vehicle to really turn necessarily, and you want everything dead nut center. If you have any kind of weird angle to it, it could pull the car one way or another on track, and then of course you're correcting, and at that point the other guy's going right past you. Same with the rear. You really want to be about 0 on the camber, and of course you want your toe to be as 0 as possible. Now currently I'm at about -2. The reason being is the rear mount for this, I was able to find a varying degree mount to give me as less negative camber as possible, meaning I was bringing the innards of the wheels out to 0. And there is nothing that is 0 degrees that's on the market for this chassis. I have heard that the rear hub you can actually find from a couple of different companies, and that might just 0 it out. I've got to research that and find out. But I'm going to try it with -2 in the way of toe and the rear and see what that does, and maybe that'll help with a little bit of the stability. If it doesn't, we can always go back and make the changes later on. So that's pretty much it. I mean, it's kind of a quick video today for you guys, but a couple people had asked where I was with this because they're working on their own. So hopefully this helps you guys out with getting things going. And of course, at the end of the video, I'm going to have a full parts list of everything, of where I'm at least with the latest updates. And then in the first video, there's a full parts list there of everything that I really went through and changed. And as far as the power plant goes, I'm still going to go with the Fantom Racing setup. And the reason being is that I've just had a lot of success with Fantom over the years of racing RC cars. I've been doing this since the 90s, and when I first got back into this and really started upgrading my other motors and ESCs and batteries, Fantom was a company that basically had everything coming from one source. They had a quality motor, they had good batteries, and an easily programmable electronic speed controller, even for a guy like me who has to fumble through some instructions and figure it out. So for me, it ended up working out really well to just stick with our products. I'm not sponsored by Fantom in any way, so don't think that I'm saying that because I've got a contract with them and I've got to mention them in every video. That's not why. It just happens to be that they work for me. There's plenty of other electronic speed controllers, batteries, and motor combinations on the market that a lot of guys are using just in the RC world in general, not just with the drag car setups. So that's pretty much where we're at for now. I'm going to get a few things buttoned up, get the ride height set a little bit, because I do have another battery and a motor I can set in here and make sure I have the ride height where I'm at with the weight on the chassis, and then paint the body, and we're going to go over the electronics and hopefully have this thing squared away and ready to go, and then we can start making test hits, and that'll be in, of course, the third video, which hopefully won't be too far from now. And I'll do the final setup on everything in the third video as far as where I set the shock angle, and of course the oil and pistons. If I suddenly make a change there, I'll let you guys know on that. And of course the wheelie bar height in relation to the chassis as far as how all that goes. So for now, this is Brad with Lucky 7 Racing. My car's coffee done an automotive event in San Diego, California, and I hope to see you guys at the racetrack.